Hey, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of the Chocolate Thunder Podcast. I am Joshua Rosas. I thought today that I might go over a little bit of my writing process for how I come up with jokes or how I start to work on and form my jokes. And of course, everybody's writing process is different, and I am clearly no expert at all in this subject. But I just thought I'd give my take on it and what helps me along the way. Typically, what works for me is that I'll think of like either ideas or past experiences or just conversations that I've had with friends and whoever. And once that idea pops into my head, usually I'll just go into the notes section on my phone and I just really kind of I start jotting down ideas. And even if it's a one sentence or a few words, or sometimes it could be even a whole paragraph, and I'm not necessarily trying to get it down like as a perfected joke or some kind of poetry or great literature. I'm just trying to get the idea down so this way I don't forget and I can actually remember later when I actually go to work on this joke. Because I can't tell you how many times I've mistakenly told myself, "Oh, I don't need to write it down. I can remember that. I'll remember it later," and then I will sit there for hours on end trying to remember what it was that I was thinking about earlier, and to no avail. It just will not work at all. So yeah, one thing I've definitely learned is make sure to write down the idea, even if it's just, taking a couple of seconds to actually sit there and jot it down, because it will make the world of difference in remembering it. I've probably let a bunch of good ideas slip through the cracks because I just couldn't take that 2 seconds to write down the idea. Yeah, so once I actually write down the idea, when I'm ready to go and sit and actually work on it, what I'll do is either in my notebook or on the notepad in my phone, I'll actually think to myself how I want to say the joke initially, and not worrying about any kind of editing and stuff like that. I actually will just kind of write it out however I hear it in my head, even though I know I'm going to have to go back and rework it. But so this way it's a full thought out idea and I can kind of step back and take a look at it. And then after that, I typically will, start the editing process on it, looking in like, okay, I don't need this line. It's too wordy in this section, or this part goes too long without any kind of funny or any kind of laugh or jab to keep the audience entertained, I should say. And I know some comics, they definitely like to do the laugh at the end and kind of use the beginning to sort of almost misguide and redirect the audience, which I do that as well. But to me, I kind of like to have little laughs thrown in there so it kind of lets the audience take their guard down. So this way, when either the twist of the joke or the big laugh that I'm aiming for at the end comes, they're not expecting it, and it's almost like a sucker punch to that comedic bone, and it gets them laughing really good. And of course, it never always works out the way you want it. No matter how fine tuned your joke is, some people may not find it funny, or the way you presented it that night just may not be up to par, and so it just doesn't hit the same. It definitely does make a difference on how you present it. Another thing I kind of wanted to touch on in this episode is how my anxiety and my depression can also affect my joke writing. I notice anytime I'm having, an anxious episode or going through like a depressive state for a little while, it'll make me not feel motivated to write. And I think that just kind of makes my anxiety worsen, because I know there's jokes I want to work on, or I know I got to keep churning out new material. And of course, they'll rework and refine the old material, but in my opinion, as a comedian, you always want to try coming up with new stuff all the time. And, of course, it may be, however long before it's actually ready, but you want to constantly be working on it and stimulating that part of your brain that helps you come up with jokes. Sort of like whenever a musician has to practice for X amount of time every day just to, stay sharp. And even if it's stuff that they learned when they were first picking up that instrument. Yeah, I do think that my depression and anxiety can hinder that sometimes. Um, Sometimes I'll just stare at my notebook and I'll try to like force myself like to write and get motivated, and it doesn't always work. Sometimes I can actually pull myself out of that funk, and even if I don't come up with something new, maybe I'll go back and rework on a joke that didn't hit or didn't really land and needs to be revised and edited. But some days it doesn't, and I try to work through it. I try to make sure I do as many spots as I can, to work out these jokes. But anxiety and depression, it affects everybody differently. So my experience with it may not be your experience with it if you do have any of these. And it's just something to think about, that it's okay to feel overwhelmed and unmotivated sometimes. And I think in moments like that, at least for me, it's just kind of, I got to take a step back, kind of let it pass. And yeah, it does make me anxious at first to, because I feel like I should be working on my jokes. I should be trying to come up with new material and rework stuff that didn't work before. But, it's a process. I mean, the game of comedy is, it's the long game. You're not gonna get overnight success. You're not gonna come up with the perfect joke overnight. Jokes that I thought would be hilarious, and I thought, this is it. This is an award-winning joke. I've gone out there and done it, and it's just completely bombed, landed on crickets. And so, it's okay to take steps back and, clear your head and get in the right mindset for it. I do notice that, whenever I am feeling anxious or going through depression, that I do tend to lean a little bit more into the self-deprecating jokes. And I don't know if that's just where my headspace is at the time, or if that's because I'm just not in the right mindset. I'm in a negative mindset. I really don't know what the case is. It's just a pattern I've noticed among, for myself. I know this isn't, anything groundbreaking or anything new to anybody, but I just thought I'd kind of share that a little bit with y'all on how I actually sit down and write out jokes, and what my writing process is, and how even sometimes internal and external factors will, kind of affect everything. It's, I mean, we're all just human. We all go through it every day. I would like to be a well-oiled machine that just goes nonstop, but that's more just fantasy. I do have bad days just like everybody else, and but I think it's something that we can all kind of share, that same kind of sentiment and compassion for one another. So, I don't really know if anybody else will relate or share these experiences, but I hope if it does reach out to anybody, you're not the only one. You don't have to feel like you're alone in these kind of situations to where you really let it get you down. But that's going to be it for me today on this episode, guys. Please consider subscribing and follow me over on Instagram at Chocolate Thunder Podcast. And please give a follow to my comedy page as well, at Joshua Rosas Comedy. Thanks again for tuning in, and I'll see you on the next one.